Running backs preview part 2 right now on Fantasy Football Today, presented by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. It's Adam, Heath, and Jamie here. We welcome you if you're watching on YouTube, youtube.com/fantasyfootballtoday. It is blue shirt day for two of us. Very similar blue, very nice Giants blue we've got going on there, Heath. You look great.
I moved Tyrone Tracy up in my rankings last night and wanted to wear a shirt that reflected that, since we're going to talk about him on the running back preview part 2.
I thought you guys were wearing Scata Blue.
Very nice. When we were talking about Scadaboo's injury the other day, Dave IM'd me and said he has a Scadaboo-boo. And it was funny. I wish he would have said that on the air. So shout out to Dave. Yeah. I'm going to start by asking you some quick questions about round 1 running backs. Not all of them. I don't think I'm going to ask you about Saquon Barkley. We've talked about him a lot. We will get to him. But here's some quick questions. Why is Bijan Robinson RB1? He averaged 19.9 PPR fantasy points per game last season. That is the lowest in 8 years for next season's RB1 in ADP. So, Heath, why do you think Bijan Robinson has climbed to number 1 in ADP?
Because the guys that you could make the argument for over him have more concerns, and the first few picks of your draft, maybe even the first round, are the one place that you should be a little bit more concerned with the floor. Saquon Barkley, we've been over those concerns a million times. Achane had injury problems 2 years ago, and then Tua had injury problems last year. Jahmyr Gibbs hasn't been as good as Bijan Robinson when David Montgomery is healthy, and he lost Ben Johnson. Christian McCaffrey, obviously. Ashton Jeanty, rookie. Derrick Henry, old. So he's just the safest elite running back.
Jamie, what kind of split? I actually want both of you to weigh in on this one. What kind of split are you expecting in the Detroit backfield? Because this story with Jahmyr Gibbs, if there were no David Montgomery, I feel confident Jahmyr Gibbs would be the 1.1 overall pick. With David Montgomery, he averaged about 19 PPR fantasy points per game last year, which would have been RB5 per game. Very good, but not super elite. Are you expecting more Gibbs than what we usually get this year, Jamie?
I am. I'm expecting a little bit more in the passing game as well. So I think that's going to help him in PPR. So he goes from potentially 52 catches to north of 60 based on how I think they're going to use him in the new offense. And then you have the potential of maybe getting more carries based on Montgomery and his injury concerns from the last couple of years, plus being a little bit older. Gibbs now going into year 3. So I am expecting Gibbs to get more work this year.
I'm not really, because like if you were just expecting what he did last year, then you're factoring in a 3-game absence from Montgomery, I think. And I hate to expect more than that.
Oh, well, he was number 1 per game last year. Or no, he was number 1 overall last year because Barkley sat out week 18. I think he was number 2 per game. So I think basically what he did all of last year, including the last 3 games without Montgomery, would justify a top 5 pick, right? Yes.
But it's also like David Montgomery hasn't missed 3 games every year of his career. It's also possible David Montgomery plays 17 games. So
right.
I like there is some, if that happens, then I think Jahmyr Gibbs could be worth the 12th pick.
So where do you have him? As I know you're the lower
7.
Okay. 7 overall, not RB7. All right. Next question about round 1 running backs. Rank these in order of worry. Yeah, your most concerned to your least concerned. Saquon Barkley's workload, over 480 touches last year. Derrick Henry's age. Christian McCaffrey's injury history. Jamie, you can start.
Christian McCaffrey's injury history. What's the Saquon Barkley one?
His workload.
Saquon Barkley's workload, Derrick Henry's age.
I'll go McCaffrey, Henry, Barkley in terms of worry.
And then the last one is, who do you prefer, Ashton Jeanty or Devon Achane Heath?
Achane.
Jamie.
Achane also.
Okay, why? And what is it that the people are missing about Achane? Because his ADP is 12th on Fantasy Pros. I think it's something like 14th on Football Guys. In our consensus rankings, he's, I want to say 3rd overall. I'll double check on that. Overall, what are people missing about Achane?
The logo next to his name.
Is that it? Do you think they're missing the splits?
I think it's look at the names that he's around. You can mix these guys up in a lot of different orders. A lot of people still have Barkley 1. So it's the love of Jahmyr Gibbs. It's the hope that McCaffrey's back. It's the expectation of what Jeanty could be. It's the seasons that Bijan and Barkley just had. So it's and it's Henry's resume. So I think when you look at those 7 running backs, there's going to be a lot of personal preference. And I think anytime, I know when I post the results of our drafts, and Heath has obviously been the one that's taken Achane the earliest. I think when we see him in the middle of the first round, certainly the end of the first round, we don't get a lot of pushback. When we see him, when he takes, I know there was one draft where you took him in the top 3. That's when we start to get the, oh my God, why is Achane going there? And then when you pull back the curtain and you reveal why, and it's like, oh, I didn't realize he was that good with 2. I didn't realize that he actually led the position in reception. I didn't realize that maybe he has this much upside, and I should be considering round 1 versus round 2. So it's just a matter of, I think, looking at him by comparison to all these other great players. It's the same with the top end receivers. I think once you get past the top 3, all those guys could be in the mix for the top 5. Nico and Thomas and Puka and all those guys. It's the same type of conversation. So if you think that you think that Tua is going to stay healthy, then Achane does have an opportunity to be the number 1 running back this year, based on how those 2 have operated together. So, if you do believe in the Dolphins and you believe that they're going to have a successful season because their quarterback stays healthy, Achane has, if he stays healthy, the chance to be a monster.
I think 2 things. They're missing Azer stats. Is the first thing they're missing, and I feel sorry for anybody who's missing Azer stats in their life. It's a source of joy. And then the other thing is, I'm not even a believer in the Dolphins. I think that they might be the worst team in their division, but they're missing receiving upside. Like, if they have to go 65% pass, it might be better for Achane than if they're running the ball more.
Yeah. So the Azer stat, let me see if I have a.
But that's just an Azer stat.
The Azer stat is that with Tua Tagovailoa healthy, Devon Achane was on pace for 1,779 total yards, 17 touchdowns. He averaged a touchdown per game, 104 catches, 22.6 PPR fantasy points per game. One person saying in the chat, and I think it's a good point. He said, I don't like to predict injuries, but Achane scares me. Jeanty is a bull. So yeah, you just look at their body type. Jeanty does seem more likely to withstand the injuries, but I guess Achane is like the receptions guy. He had 78 receptions last year, and with Tua, he was on pace for 104. I don't know that you can expect that, but
this could be Kamara. I mean, Jeanty doesn't deserve to be mentioned in Derrick Henry's, but it could be Kamara and Derrick Henry. Like, it could be stylistically, and it's not just last year's Azer stat, but the year before, he had 2 games where he played a combined 9 snaps. One of them at the beginning of the year because he just wasn't a focal point yet, and one of them because he got hurt. And so he was over 20 fantasy points per game the year before when he was healthy. I think the expectation should be 20 fantasy points per game for Achane for as many games as he and Tua stay healthy. And if that's 13 plus, then our ranking's right.
All right. Yeah. So he's 5th overall in our consensus rankings, and he is RB2 in our consensus rankings. All right. So do some quick news and notes here. We're going to just basically go through ADP in a bit, but Keenan Allen signing with the Chargers for 1 year, $8.5 million. And I haven't been able to find the way it's structured. I'm hoping there's some incentives in there, to get it to $8.5 million. That's a lot of money to pay a 33-year-old coming off his worst season. But did you guys?
Not a lot of money.
It is a lot of money for a 33-year-old coming off his worst season.
It's also the team that he's spent 11 seasons with. So that's
wonderful. Do you think the Cowboys should have given Zeke $8 million last year? No.
First off, that's rude.
I think what Keenan Allen will do for the Chargers is probably better than what Zeke did for the Cowboys.
Yeah, I hope so.
And you should put a gigantic asterisk next to worst season of his career.
It was a really bad year for him.
But why has Keenan Allen been a 68% catch percentage guy for his entire career and was 58% last year?
Just to put that in perspective in terms of worst year, it matched his worst year. So he had another 12.3 PPR point per game season, which was his second year of his career. You also have to factor in, yes, it was bad. He had 4 games last season at 32 years old, over 20 PPR points.
Yeah. Look, I said it on his live stream last night. I don't know that it was his fault. DJ Moore had the lowest yards per route run of his career. Romo Dunze had one of the lowest yards per route run for any rookie in the last decade. Keenan Allen, lowest yards per route run of his career. So I think it was a Chicago problem. But 33-year-old receivers, 33-year-old slot receivers like Keenan Allen, I think when you look at Larry Fitzgerald, when you look at Julian Edelman, they maybe age better than, big physical outside guys or whatever. But just a quick question, because we're going to talk about this tomorrow. Did you lower Ladd McConkey in your rankings?
Yes.
Projections, yes. Rankings, no, because I had him a tier break behind him. And so it's that whole thing about who's wide receiver 14, 15, 16, and I don't really love him. So he's still 13 for me.
I dropped him from 13 to 16. So I put him behind Devontae Adams, JSN, and Garrett Wilson.
Okay. And Kyren Williams signed a 3-year deal worth $33 million, $23 million guaranteed. He led the NFL with 43% of his team's offensive touches in 2024. This is Kyren Williams. And if you were worried about that aspect of it, then hopefully you are not worried anymore because he signed this 3-year extension. Matthew Stafford's back injury is a maintenance issue, according to Adam Schefter. They're optimistic about him being ready for week 1. Shedeur Sanders is going to start Cleveland's first preseason game. That's not necessarily a good thing for Shedeur Sanders. Yeah, but we knew he wasn't leading the competition. That seems like it's Flacco's.
Most exciting preseason game of the year.
Why?
We get to see Shedeur Sanders for a half. We get to see Dylan Sampson. We get to see Harold Fannin without the top wide receivers. It's going to be awesome.
All right. Cam Ward's going to play in the preseason opener. Devin Neal, rookie running back for the Saints, he's out a couple of weeks with a hamstring injury. And George Kittle wants his smelling salts back. He is upset that the NFL is banning ammonia and smelling salts. Have you guys ever used smelling salts?
No, but what I'm reading is that they can ban the team from providing them. They can't ban the players from using them.
I saw that nuance too. That is interesting.
Kittle's just going to bring a little bag over his own bag onto the sideline.
He uses it every drive,
right?
Before every drive. And I've had it once. I gave blood and nearly passed out, and I got smelling salts. They're insane. They are. Holy cow!
I gave blood and nearly passed out. It's probably the most Adam has.
Yeah, I know.
Like, that is perfect.
I know. I thought I was fine. Then I was walking out of the Bloodmobile, and it was very hot day in Florida. And I got outside and I turned right around and I went back in the Bloodmobile and I was like, ugh. And they assisted me. Anyway, we can get into ADP here. Let's do it. Why not? All right. So what do you guys want to say about round 1? So it's Bijan Robinson. This is Fantasy Pros PPR ADP. He's got the second highest ADP. He's basically tied with Saquon Barkley. They're both at 2.8. So you got Chase with his ADP is 1, and then Barkley. Oh, I don't know what. Oh, you're looking at running back. Okay, so you can throw that up. That's fine. If you're going to hear different numbers from me than what you're going to see on that screen, if you just look at running back, the ADPs change a little bit. But if you look at overall, Bijan is 2.8, Barkley's 2.8, Gibbs 5th. McCaffrey is 9th, Henry is 10th, Jeanty is 10th, and Achane is 12th. So that would be 6 running backs in the first round. Robinson, Barkley, Gibbs in the top 5, McCaffrey 9th, Henry 10th, Achane 12th. Jamie, your read on the first round ADP.
I mean, as I said before, when you're looking at these guys, I think it's pretty impressive how good these guys can be. And so it's a matter of, do you want to start your team with a running back? Which one is your preferred preference? Because as we know, people are going to pass on McCaffrey because of what happened last year. People are going to pass on Henry because of his age. People are going to pass on Gibbs because of Montgomery, Barkley because of the workload. So it's a matter of, what pick you have, what you think you can get in round 2, and then how you want to start, with building your roster here. So the one that's a little surprising to me just based on PPR is Henry. Not that I don't think he's going to be great again, but he's just not going to catch as many passes as these other guys. So, for the most part, though, I agree. I think, and I think Achane should be a round 1 pick.
Yeah, I think from the whole group's perspective, even though I'm the high guy, Saquon's a little too high. For me, McCaffrey and Henry are also a little too high.
All right, we're going to come back to this discussion in a moment. I want to offer you something wonderful right now. It's on BetMGM. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use the bonus code FANTASY. You're going to get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. So here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app. Sign up using the bonus code FANTASY. Deposit at least $10. That's it. Just $10. Place your first wager on any game, and you're going to receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your bet loses. Just make sure that you use the bonus code FANTASY when you sign up on BetMGM. Quick break here. We'll be right back to talk about running back versus wide receiver in round one. You go Justin Jefferson and Jahmyr Gibbs, for example. We'll talk about that after this.
Here we go. The 2025 CBS Sports NFL schedule is here. 18 glorious Sundays.
He's got his receiver touchdown.
Filled with rematches.
Oh, the play of the year.
And rivalries.
Touchdown, Bengals.
Plus, plenty of superstar showdowns. And an epic matchup between the Chiefs and Cowboys on Thanksgiving. Clear your Sundays beginning September 7th for the NFL on CBS and Paramount Plus.
Okay, so again, round one is Robinson, Barkley, Gibbs, McCaffrey, Henry, Jeanty, and Achane. Although it appears that I didn't say Ashton Jeanty's name, did I? Yep, I skipped him. So there are 7 running backs. I apologize. Robinson, Barkley, Gibbs, McCaffrey, Henry, Jeanty, Achane. So that was stupid of me. My apologies. 7 first-round running backs. Do you guys have a strong take on these guys should go after these receivers or anything like that? Or, it's kind of a good jumbled mess in the first round just in terms of choosing wide receivers and running backs.
I would take Chase over all of them, Lamb over all of them besides Bijan. And then I've got the top 5 running backs, and then a lot of wide receivers before you get to McCaffrey and Henry for me.
The only 2 that I do not have in the first round currently are Jeanty and Henry. Jeanty is like 13th or 14th overall for me, so just outside. Basically, if you have the turn, you're taking him either 12 or 13 for me. And then Henry is like a pick or 2 behind that as well.
Okay. And we kind of talked about if you have a pick late in round 1, you might be more likely to find a wide receiver that you like in round 2, because you might be talking about Nico Collins, Brian Thomas Jr., AJ Brown, or Josh Jacobs. And you might say, well, Josh Jacobs is not in the elite tier, whereas at least Nico and Brian Thomas are closer to the elite tier or in the elite tier. So that might influence your round 1 pick. Maybe you're more likely to go running back if you so desire to leave round 1 and 2 with a running back and a wide receiver. Okay. Unless you guys have anything to say, you know what, Jamie, you mentioned Derrick Henry on Monday's network show as just somebody that we kind of just I have taken for granted a little bit and haven't focused enough on him. What do you want to say about Derrick Henry? He was the number 3 running back per game, basically tied in full PPR. He had 19 catches. Bijan Robinson, had 60, and they averaged the same amount of PPR fantasy points per game. And then let me give you this stat. When they didn't score touchdowns, if I can find that, when they didn't score a touchdown last year, Bijan Robinson averaged something like half a point more per game than Derrick Henry. So that really stood out to me. He wasn't touchdown dependent. But what do you think about Henry?
I think he said it best on yesterday's show, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe it was another show. But in any event, I'm just tired of betting against him at this point. It's just until I'm assuming probably breaks down because, he's not slowing down. Who knows how long he can continue to do this, but he keeps himself in great shape. He's now on the perfect team for his skill set because even with the lack of receptions, they're going to be either in games or winning games almost every time. That's just been Harbaugh's formula success, Lamar Jackson's formula success. They're just a great team. And that's been when he's been at his best, at least in the last several years, going back to Tennessee. When they were losing, he was terrible. When they were winning, he was great. And so he just has the opportunity to continue to defy father time until we see otherwise. So I hope he doesn't get hurt and break down. The one time that it happened to him, he broke his foot. He couldn't play half the season. So if you want to take him in round 1 and you don't love those receivers, or to your point, Adam, if you think I need to guarantee myself one of those top 7 running backs, and then I could still take a Brian Thomas, a Nico Collins. We've seen Amon-Ra St. Brown fall into round 2 as well. Drake London, whoever your cutoff is, AJ Brown. It's not a bad way to build your roster. So the lack of receptions don't hurt him. The touchdowns, even at this point, not necessarily something that he has to have. He's just such a freak of nature that he's going to be in the mix to be the running back leader and the touchdown leader, I think, on a yearly basis.
Okay. Round 1 is a very running back heavy round with 7 of them off the board. We have 3 off the board in round 2, maybe 4. Let's see. We have Josh Jacobs, 17th. Yeah, we'll say 4 because Kyren falls in at the turn. These are RBs 8 through 11. Josh Jacobs, 17th. Jonathan Taylor, 20th. Bucky Irving, 22nd. Kyren Williams, 24th. Chase Brown's going to be in round 3, but we could include him in this discussion because obviously he's in this tier. But Heath, do you think it's a natural separation there, first of all, between the round 1 guys up to Achane and Jeanty, and then the round 2 guys, Jacobs, Taylor, Bucky, Kyren, and then Chase Brown maybe?
Yeah. I think that I've got a pretty big gap now. I've been the high guy on Kyren, and I'll probably remain to be the high guy on him. I think projections-wise, he's very close to that top tier. And again, I don't have 7 running backs in round 1. I've got 5. But I think Kyren should be right there at the top of this group and in round 2.
Okay. So how do you guys see those 4? Or if you want to include Chase Brown, we can.
Yeah, you have to include Chase Brown.
All right. So he's technically round 3, but where is he in round 3? He's 27th overall. We love that value. At least Jamie and Heath, you also love that value?
I think I have him at 27.
Okay.
So I'm fine with that value.
All right. So then, Jamie, it's Jacobs, Taylor, Bucky, Kyren, Chase Brown. We've got some provenness. We've got some kind of exciting day 3 guys in Chase Brown and Bucky Irving. Break down these 5 running backs.
Jacobs, I think, is just, I brought him up on the show too. Like, it just feels like we're taking him for granted a little bit based on what he did last year. He's had one really down season, and it was the holdout year. And otherwise, he's been pretty consistent with his production. And so now Marshawn Lloyd is hurt again. This is one of the, I think, I don't want to say surprise. This could be one of the surprise offenses. It just was the way last year unfolded for them with Jordan Love getting hurt. They didn't throw the ball as much. They maybe weren't as prolific as some other teams. I think they have the opportunity to get back to that. They're certainly going to be one of the better teams running the ball. He's just like an auto select for me in round 2. And so, like Keith said, Kyren's at the top of the list for him. I feel like Jacobs it's easy for me to say Jacobs is the top of the next tier, so after the first 7. I just like the opportunity for him. Like he doesn't feel like as maybe explosive, which this is going to sound strange to say, but like as explosive as maybe Chase Brown could be, or Bucky Irving could be, or even some of the guys ahead of him. We're getting some comments in the chat that Jacob should be ahead of Jeanty. And you can make a strong argument for that, because at least you've seen Jacobs do it, and we're hoping Jeanty's going to do it. So I think in the case of Jacobs, easy round 2. Taylor, the receptions are not going to be there. It's a little bit of a mystery of how the quarterback play will unfold. But in any event, Taylor is a safe, round 2 pick. Bucky and Chase Brown are the wild cards. And if they hit to the level that we saw last year when they were at their peak, they probably should be round 1 picks. But again, you're hearing the Bucs don't want to necessarily go back to the end of season workload with Bucky Irving right away. They want to be a little bit more cautious. So you're going to see Rachaad White. And in the case of Chase Brown, you heard from their offense coordinator, they're going to use him that way. I just don't understand why people are not buying into it more. Not that 27th overall is a bad spot for him, but to me, feels like more upside than Kyren Williams, more upside than Bucky Irving, more upside than Jonathan Taylor. So that's why I have him ranked.
Yeah, go ahead.
Making the case for Kyren at the top is just that last year, Taylor, Jacobs, and Kyren were separated by less than a half a point per game. The year before, Kyren was much better than all these guys we were talking about, second best in fantasy on a per game basis. And the team that's given him 21 touches per game each of the last 2 years just gave him 3 more years. So I don't really think we see a big step back. And I think that's what separates maybe Taylor and Jacobs also. Jacobs has one other season as good as what he did last year. But we've seen him. We know he's a great NFL running back. Taylor, same thing. Great draft capital, has had these types of seasons before was actually better than Jacobs and Kyren last year. Brown and Bucky are day 3 guys that we saw it from for about half a season. And so it was more explosive than the other 3. Maybe not than Taylor at his best. But do you want to bet on the 8-game sample of the 2 day 3 guys, or the 2-season sample for Kyren, the multiple season sample for Taylor and Jacobs?
I guess the question would be, though, is if we're going to attach day 3 capital to those guys, Kyren was also a day 3 guy that got an opportunity to be a lead running back on his team and has run away with it. And the hope would be is that Bucky and Chase Brown do the same thing. And their environments right now. Now you could say no Tristan Wirfs, and maybe the offensive line for the Bucs isn't going to be as good, and the competition for Bucky is a little bit more concerning. And Chase Brown, look, there's maybe some offensive line questions, I don't know, but I think just in the way that these guys are, and I don't know where you come out on it, Heath, but like they're all really close for me in my rankings. It's not like I'm this is not an anti-Kyren discussion. So it's not, I hope anybody take it that way. I just think like at this point I'm throwing out draft capital, so because Kyren has proven he can do that. I think Bucky's going to prove he can do that. I think Chase Brown's going to prove he can do that. So I don't really worry about that anymore. They're all going to kind of be in the same scenario here. And it's just a matter of, will the Rams, to whatever degree, because you said it last year, Kyren was 3rd in touches per game behind Barkley and Jacobs. Or I'm sorry, Barkley and Taylor.
I had him
average more
first.
touches per game than
You had him first?
Well, no, the stat that I saw, Kyren, I read it on CBSSports.com. He led the NFL in percentage of his team's touches. That's what
okay. But just in terms of touches per game, Barkley had more touches per game and Taylor had more touches per game. The year before, he was number 1, and it was basically the same number. So he's going to be around 21 touches per game if they continue to do that. Will they take some work off of his plate? Not, again, to make it and lower Kyren, be worried about Kyren. I just think like Chase Brown's headed in a direction that I think could be better than Kyren. And at this point, I like Bucky slightly better than Kyren, but very close. They're back-to-back in my rankings.
And just to finish up the day 3 conversation, I think Jamie's right to say they're all 3 day 3 guys. I'm just more likely to believe the day 3 guy that's done it for 2 years than the day 3 guys that did it for 3 months.
Half a season. But, yeah. That's a good point. I mean, I got to tell you, I have watched a decent amount of Bucky Irving tape, and I watched some more this morning. I'm completely blown away by him.
He's incredible.
And I've mentioned a few names of day 3 guys who averaged as many or more yards per carry than Bucky Irving, and were drafted kind of high the next year. And they were Kerryon Johnson, Andre Ellington, and Thomas Rawls. Okay. One of the differences between the 2 of them is that they combined those 3 guys in their rookie years for something like 4 carries of 30 or more yards. And Irving had 7. He's not super fast, but he's not slow. And I don't know. I think he's amazing. And I really struggle with this decision. So let's bring up a Twitter poll here real quick. I asked, who was your favorite running back in this group in PPR? Bucky Irving, Jonathan Taylor, Kyren Williams, or Chase Brown? I did not include Josh Jacobs because he's in ADP, he's sort of clearly ahead of them. But I mean, I really struggle with this. I go, man, if I take Kyren Williams, I feel like I like all of them. But with Bucky and Chase Brown, they seem a little more exciting to me. But here's what the poll said. Bucky Irving, 27%. Taylor, 20%. Kyren, 18%. Chase Brown, 35%. So that's pretty telling. He's last in ADP.
That's really strange.
He's your favorite?
Yeah.
What changes if it's half PPR? It's Bucky, Taylor, Kyren, and Chase Brown.
Then I go to Taylor.
So okay. I've got these guys ranked right now. I think Kyren, Bucky, Chase, or Kyren, Bucky, Taylor, Chase. Half PPR, I'd probably be similar.
Okay. And for the non-PPR folks out there, what changes in non-PPR?
Kyren, Taylor, Bucky, Chase.
Bucky, one concern I have with Bucky Irving is that he does not play on third down. One of the lowest third down route participation rates among any relevant running. He's basically Derrick Henry in that regard. He did have the 4th most catches on first or second down, and I do think they'll get it. I watch it. I mean, it's screen passes, design plays for him, but he doesn't play on third down. So it will limit. He had 3 third down catches last year. That will limit his catch upside a little bit, and I don't see why they'd go away from Rachaad White in that area, but maybe it changes a little bit. Maybe he gets more in on third down. Anyway, I think they're really good running backs, and we're excited about them.
They're going to use Rachaad White.
Yeah. Okay, round 3 running backs. There's only 3 of them, and that is Chase Brown early in round 3, 27th overall, and we've got after him, I think it's Breece Hall. It's James Cook and Breece Hall. Chase Brown, James Cook, Breece Hall. Let's eliminate Chase Brown from this discussion, and let's do rounds 3 and 4 here, okay? James Cook, mid-round 3, but with the holdout or the hold-in, that could fall. Breece Hall, 33rd, 34th overall. And then we're looking at Alvin Kamara, Ken Walker, Omarion Hampton, Chuba Hubbard, and James Conner. So from this, if you're looking at this list, just add Conner at the very end. On YouTube. James Cook, Breece Hall, Alvin Kamara, Ken Walker, Omarion Hampton, Chuba Hubbard, James Conner. Heath, how should I feel about this group of 7 running backs?
I think that there's most of these guys still have the upside if everything goes right to finish as a low-end RB1. Almost all of these guys have some sort of concern. I prefer Walker and Hall, and I'm quite a bit lower on Kamara and Conner. But I think that makes sense with what we said about Derrick Henry in the earlier segment. Like those older guys, I'm a little bit more concerned with, but Walker and Hall are the 2 guys I'd take in round 3, and Chuba's next for me.
Okay, Jamie, I'm going to give the names one more time, and you give me your thoughts. James Cook, Breece Hall, Alvin Kamara, Ken Walker, Omarion Hampton, Chuba Hubbard.
My 2 favorites, Walker by far. I'm glad that he came back to practice dealing with a sore foot. So clearly there's anytime he gets hurt, is going to scare people. Based on what his track record was, missing all the time that he missed last year. I get it. It's going to make people a little bit sketchy to take him in round 3, which is probably why his ADP is in round 4. Hampton's the one that's next for me. And obviously we have a lot of things at play here. You have a backup running back, maybe a 1A in Najee Harris. We don't know when he's going to return to practice. This eye injury is really, really puzzling just how that's all playing out. So hopefully he's fine and can be a factor, but it's giving Hampton the opportunity to prove himself. The biggest issue is, though, he's in a Greg Roman offense that they don't throw the ball to their running backs as much as we would like. And so will he even be the guy playing on obvious passing downs? Can he get to north of 30 receptions? I think that's a good number, but that's probably not much more than that. I don't know what you haven't projected for Heath, but the reception total is what scares me more than anything with him. The older running backs, so I don't want to put Hubbard in the older running backs, but I think once you get past those 2 guys for me, this is now where I put James Cook, so he's now a round 4 pick. I just nervous about the obvious regression from a touchdown standpoint. And then now you have this hold-in situation where who knows how it's going to play itself out. I think round 4 is probably where the farthest he will fall unless he's going to miss game time, which I don't think will be the case, but that's about the lowest I would go for him. It's early round 4. So when you get to Kamara and Hubbard and Conner, like they feel like they're pretty good fallback options in this scoring format. Obviously half and non-PPR, Kamara is going to struggle. I feel like Hubbard's another guy. Dave brought him up on the names that we're not talking about enough. Like, I know I have a little bit of concern, and I know you brought it up earlier this offseason about, is he just the guy that kind of ended up in a great situation? Is he that good? Well, he was that good last year. And again, his competition, Rico Dowdle and Trevor Etienne, how much will they take him off the field? I don't think very much. So Hubbard may be one of the more undervalued players. Forget about just running backs, undervalued players that it's just like, okay, I'll take him when he's there. Don't really love it. By the end of the season, you'll probably be like, oh, I'm glad I have him on my team.
Yeah, Chuba Hubbard, I did bring up, is he just the guy? When I look at this list of running backs, he's the one that scares me the most as being just the guy, because he was in his career. I mean, look, if you just go back a year ago, they bring in Miles Sanders, they draft Jonathan Brooks. They once upon a time had Jonathan Stewart. They draft Jonathan Brooks. I don't think Chuba Hubbard was necessarily in their long-term plans. And then everything changed for him. And he had a great year. He was RB9 per game after the first 2 weeks of the season. Remember, the first 2 weeks of the season, Bryce Young played. He was horrible. He got benched. Andy Dalton came in. He played okay. Bryce Young came in later. He played pretty well. And Chuba Hubbard was RB9 per game. But that wasn't the first time in Chuba Hubbard's career that he got an opportunity. At the end of 2023, he also did. And he wasn't that good. I think he was like RB21-ish per game. So, I guess I have it right here. He got the last 12 games of 2023, Chuba Hubbard became the starting running back. He was on pace for 288 carries, 38 catches. He averaged 3.7 yards per carry, 12.4 PPR fantasy points per game, which is going to be right around RB24 per game every season. So how much do you buy the jump? Two years in a row, he had big work. 1 year he was RB24, 1 year was RB9.
I think part of the question is, do you expect the Panthers offense to be improved? And it wasn't great last year, but improved like it was last year, especially in the second half, or disastrous like it was in 2023. I just think it's interesting comparing Chuba to James Cook. He said Cook's going a little bit ahead of him, right?
About a full round ahead of him based on this ADP.
They were about a half a point per game different last year, with Cook scoring 18 touchdowns to Hubbard's 11. Hubbard had 43 more carries and 11 more catches. I think even without the holdout concerns, I know I did. I had Hubbard ahead of Cook. And with the holdout concerns, it should be pretty easy to put Hubbard ahead of Cook.
I think the one thing, though, to your question, Adam, like, can he do it again? You can make a lot of comparisons between Chuba Hubbard and Kyren Williams, because a lot of people will question, is Kyren Williams that talented? But he's in such a great situation. And Chuba Hubbard's situation got so much better the last couple of years because of Canales and his system. But mostly last year with the offensive line, like, they really went out and said, we are going to make our offensive line good. And they did. And so the only question for me would be is, are they going to give some work to other guys? And I know Rico Dowdle compensation tells you not so much. And Trevor Etienne draft capital tells you not so much. I'm just curious to see if they will, because who knows if they wanted to last year and it was just Miles Sanders and what he looked like. I mean, clearly, like, to your point, they drafted Jonathan Brooks. The hope was that he was going to be the running back of the future. And, for that kid's sake, maybe he is. But then they give him they give Hubbard the contract extension, and he sort of just took off from there. Like, he hasn't looked back yet. So it just feels like this is a great spot for him in drafts. And, just based on the ADP, forget about how we have him ranked, so like he's taking him over James Cook, for example. When you start to just stack up these players, if you go, I don't want to say zero RB, because taking a running back around 4 is not really a zero RB strategy, but like if you play in a 2 running back, 2 receiver league, to come away with stud running back round 1, 2 receivers rounds 2 and round 3, and then you get Chuba Hubbard round 4, it's a pretty good start.
I would ask you guys, though, if you look at this group again of James Cook, Breece Hall, Kamara, Ken Walker, Omarion Hampton, Chuba Hubbard, how would you feel about coming away, and James Conner, how would you feel about coming away with 2 of them? If you started, wide receiver, tight end, or wide receiver, would you draft 2 of these guys in rounds 3 and 4?
I wouldn't be opposed to it, and if it's the right to, so Breece Hall is somebody I don't draft a lot of because I'm concerned with, Justin Fields and the talk just from everything Aaron Glenn has said, and now the Braylon Allen news of him maybe being in the David Montgomery role if it's the Detroit offense. So I just don't draft him in this spot. Like, if he's there in round 4, I would take Breece Hall. I wouldn't take him in round 3. In PPR, yeah, Kamara, Walker. Like, if you tell me I come away just based on my rankings, Kamara or Hampton, and then Hubbard or Kamara or Hall, in the 4th round, then yeah, I'm fine with it.
All right.
Well, and Ken Walker's part of this group, right?
Yes.
So if I got Ken Walker as my RB1 and one of these guys is my RB2, and I've got elite wide receivers or an elite wide receiver and elite tight end, yeah, I'm okay with that.
I'd like to talk a little bit more about Ken Walker, but we're gonna have a super long show, but that's okay, right? Let's take a break. Why
don't you just factor in Walker and Charbonnet, and then you kill both of them?
Yeah. I mean, look, Charbonnet's obviously super high-end handcuff. Walker has to be more efficient. He has to be. And will their offensive line be good enough? I think it's a big concern. So anyway, we'll talk about that when we come back on Fantasy Football Today. Okay, yeah. So Ken Walker has had stretches in his career where he's been so good. Basically first round good, maybe second round good. But here's where he's finished per game in full PPR. 17th, 21st, and 12th. In half PPR, 16th, 20th, and 13th. In non-PPR, 14th, 17th, and 16th. His best stretch was probably his rookie season after Rashad Penny got hurt. His last 11 games, he was a top 10 running back per game. First 5 games of last year, Ken Walker averaged 22.3 PPR fantasy points per game, but then he averaged fewer than 12 points per game in his last 6. He only played 11 games. He does get injured a lot. His yards per carry keeps getting worse, 3.7 yards per carry last season. Hasn't really been a third down guy, hasn't been a 2-minute drill guy, so somehow he was on pace for 71 catches last year. But why you guys had Ken Walker as number 1 in this group, ahead of Cook, ahead of Hall, Kamara, Hampton, Chubbard, and Connor. Heath, why?
I think that new offensive coordinator Clint Kubiak will improve the run game efficiency at least a little bit. And I think that Ken Walker has to be more efficient than he was in the last, 6 games last year, certainly. Before those last 6 games, he was averaging 4.4 yards per carry for his career. And in the first 6 games of last year, or first 5 games of last year, he was averaging 4.7 yards per attempt. So the bad year last year in terms of efficiency was a really awful, dreadful 6 weeks where he never averaged more than 4 yards per carry. But we've seen enough evidence, I think, that Ken Walker has the ability. Somebody commented the injury history scares him. And if you're worried about injury history, I think that's a very valid point. He's had a hard time staying healthy. But we know he's a home run hitting running back. Everything we've heard this offseason is that he's the lead running back, and they're going to run more. So I think there's a chance, if he can stay healthy, for maybe 280, 300 touches.
Okay. All right. Let's wrap it up.
He got 46 catches last year too.
In 11 games, on pace for 71. I think I said, 71 catches. Okay, so James Conner, we haven't really gotten to. I think it's worth noting that James Conner left 2 games early with an injury last year, less than 30% of the snaps in those 2 games. You take away those 2 games, James Conner was on pace for 1,765 total yards, 50 catches, and 11 touchdowns. Really, really good stuff. His metrics the last 2 years in Arizona have been awesome. And it looks like one of the best running backs in football.
And I know we're all laughing about it, but we've now heard the coach, the player, and both the players, I think, say that Trey Benson's going to get more work this year. Nobody seems to believe it, and I haven't really adjusted my projections either, but Trey Benson was a good prospect and did improve as the year went on, and Connor is older. So I think it's at least a possibility. It's certainly something they keep saying is going to happen.
Let's go to rounds 5 and 6 in ADP, and that would be starting with RB20, Joe Mixon, who I took in round 6 last night, and Jamie chastised me for it.
Yeah, well, there was a reason for that, though.
Yeah. By the way, somebody asked if I said Chubbard, and yes, I did. That was on purpose. That's a nickname for Chuba Hubbard. Just easier to say. Joe Mixon, DeAndre Swift. Heath, do you like DeAndre Swift this year?
DeAndre Swift's fantastic value.
David Montgomery. Those are round 5 guys. Mixon, Swift, and Montgomery. Mixon's ADP is a little bit hard to gauge because you got to figure it's falling. Mm-hmm. It might be more like round 6 now. Travion Henderson, RJ Harvey, Aaron Jones. We have any more in round 6? I think we do, right? Caleb Johnson, I believe, is in there. Let's find Aaron Jones. And Isaiah Pacheco is after Aaron Jones, Caleb Johnson, and that would be it. So it starts with Mixon, then Swift, then David Montgomery, Travion Henderson, RJ Harvey, Isaiah Pacheco's in there somewhere, Aaron Jones, Isaiah Pacheco, and Caleb Johnson. So we have rookies, 3 rookies in there. We have a lot of veterans. Jamie, you like this range? Why rounds 5 and 6? You like these running backs?
Very much so. Especially if you draft with more of a hero RB approach, or certainly a zero RB approach, but and you don't necessarily have to pick a quarterback or tight end in the first 4 or 5 rounds. So you're stockpiling receivers in a 3 receiver league, especially, and then you get to this range as your RB2. Like, it's a great place to be. These guys have so much upside. The rookies do, at least. I think Swift does. There's no way I'm taking Mixon here unless we get anything positive in the next couple of weeks that he's going to guarantee to be playing week 1 and no issues. I would not take Aaron Jones here.
There's also, that you're not seeing on the screen, there's also Pacheco and Caleb Johnson.
Pacheco and Caleb Johnson, I think, are toward the back end of this group. But yes, this again, you have to trust that Harvey and Henderson and Caleb Johnson are going to lead their backfield at some point this season, and hopefully for a significant stretch of the season. But again, if they do, I think they're going to run away with it because of how good they could potentially be. So yes, I think there's a lot to like about this group. It's also clearly there's a lot of flaws. So this is, going to be where the dead zone is, now shift a little bit. Where this is clearly the range of these guys. But, again, if you load up on some of these receivers, look at the receivers that are on the board here. Cortland Sutton and Devontae Smith and Xavier Worthy. There's a lot to like. There's also a lot to fear. So I think there's as much upside with the running backs as the receivers and maybe more.
There might be 3 tiers represented for me in this huge group of running backs. So for me, Swift and Henderson are round 4 guys, and I would take them over Kamara and Connor, who were in the earlier group. And for me, I think Jamie probably said the same thing, but Jones, Johnson, and Pacheco are more maybe end of round 6 guys that I don't want to take in the Harvey. Like Mixon, I'm still fine in round 6, but if we go another couple of weeks, I probably won't be.
Joe Mixon's been a top 12 running back per game in 6 of the last 7 seasons in half and full PPR. He's perennially underdrafted. That used to be Tyler Lockett too, but that everything does come to an end at some point. And Mixon's 29 years old with a preseason foot injury with perhaps the worst offensive line in the NFL. So certainly this could be the year where that run comes to an end. Pacheco was RB20 at this point last year in ADP. Mm-hmm. And when did we have this conversation, Jamie? On Express?
Last night.
Yeah, so if you didn't hear it last night on the live stream, it
was both. It was actually both, because you said that Pacheco was one of the guys you're drafting a lot.
I just don't really see what's all that different about his situation. I mean, it is different, and that's why he's not being drafted in the second round. But the first 2 games of the season, he scored 15.8 points against Baltimore, great run defense, and 16.1 fantasy points against Cincinnati. He had 17 touches and 24 touches. His whole season was derailed by injury. I really think Kareem Hunt is one of the worst running backs in the NFL. However, I do think he could factor in near the goal line. I think he has value there. I'm actually more concerned about Mitchell as a backup. I'm sorry. I don't see all the negatives with Isaiah Pacheco. And Heath, you're saying he's barely a round 6 pick for you.
Yeah, we know how running backs generally score fantasy points, or touchdowns and catches. And you have to trust a pretty small sample size to believe that Pacheco is going to do a lot of either. I think even when he's been the feature running back in 2024, he scored 7 touchdowns in 14 games. And 23, yeah. And he
scored 9. He scored 7 rushing, 2 receiving.
Okay, well, right. But that's really what matters. Like, receiving touchdowns for running backs are about as random as it gets. And it's more based on the volume, I think, that you get. And I'm not convinced he's going to be a big catch guy. In fact, I don't think he will be a big catch guy. Mm-hmm. And I don't think he will be a big touchdown guy. And the last time we saw him, I know there's some training camp videos where they're not allowed to tackle him, where he's looking really good. But the last time we saw him, he was terrible. Worse than, according to Adam, the worst running back in the NFL.
One of the worst running backs.
And so I think taking him in round 6 and feeling about him like you do, like, that probably feels like a great win, and it could turn out to that. But I can't get him up into the round 4 or 5 territory with guys that I think might be top 12 running backs, or could be.
I wouldn't take him in round 4 or 5, but I happily take Pacheco in round 6. I guess earlier in round 6 than Heath would. I don't think we're too far apart. I just think there's more optimism on my side. but that's fine. David Montgomery is RB22 in ADP. He's outperformed that on a per game basis pretty substantially each of the last 2 years. So Montgomery was RB15 in full PPR. He was RB15 per game last year. And in 2023, he was 15th per game. So, and even better than that in half and non PPR. Jamie, is Montgomery a steal in this fifth season?
Yeah, I mean, he could be. It just depends on, I think, A, how is the offensive line going to hold up for Detroit missing a couple of guys? B, or one guy at least missing the change in coordinator. How much will that matter? I think the one thing that's in his favor is Dan Campbell. And what we've seen from Dan Campbell is he loves the physicality that David Montgomery brings, and the touchdown potential and the touchdown scoring for that type of player in this offense for the last 3 seasons is hard to get past. Jamal Williams 3 years ago, David Montgomery the last 2 years. It's basically a touchdown per game. Like, it's hard to get past that. And so, to Heath's point about the receiving touchdowns, like, you never want to predict this many touchdowns for anybody or project this many touchdowns for everybody. But, like, I'd be shocked if he played a full season and did not have double digits in touchdowns. Like, shocked. Mm-hmm. So if he stays healthy, that's the floor. And then it's looking at last year. Does he have more of a role in the passing game, which I think surprised a lot of people early in the season? How much will he actually continue to be the lead rusher and get as many carries or maybe more than Jahmyr Gibbs? So he's a great fallback option here. I think this is the appropriate spot for him. Late round 5, early round 6. I think people are forgetting about him because he missed the last 3 games of the season and didn't really play much in the playoffs, and how good Jahmyr Gibbs could potentially be. But, like, he's not going away. You just have to think, how many games he might miss? And like he said, if he doesn't miss 3 games and he stays healthy for 15 plus, then we're looking at probably not as good of a Jahmyr Gibbs, and we're looking at one of the better value picks for fantasy managers.
Okay, let's go to round.
And this was, brought up. Johnny just brought this up in the chat. We say this a lot. Montgomery misses times. Look how good Jahmyr Gibbs. What if Jahmyr Gibbs misses time?
Right. Yeah. Pretty good. pretty good. Let's go to round 7 and 8 here. Starts with Tony Pollard. It's Pollard, Brian Robinson Jr., Tyrone Tracy Jr., Jaylen Warren, Cam Skattebo, and Quinshon Judkins. I'd say at this point we should not be drafting Cam Skattebo or Quinshon Judkins in round 8. Agreed?
Agreed.
Judkins for sure. I think it's too soon for Skattebo. There are other guys that are probably a little low in ADP that I think we like a little more, like Tank Bigsby, for example.
Right.
But listen, Skattebo, if he gets healthy and continues to build on way the training camp started, I don't think there should be that much separation between Tracy. Like right now, yes, it feels like there should be today with Skattebo hurt, but if he's as potentially legit as he was looking, like we could see Tracy, losing work early in the season, maybe middle of the season for sure.
So round 7 and 8 running backs are Pollard, Brian Robinson Jr., Tyrone Tracy, Jaylen Warren. We don't think Skattebo and Quinshon Judkins should be there. But with Pollard, Brian Robinson, Tyrone Tracy, Jaylen Warren, Heath, are any of these similar to some of the running backs we just heard in round 6, which would be Pacheco, Aaron Jones, Caleb Johnson, RJ Harvey, Travion Henderson?
I have most of this group ahead of the bottom 3 that I said in the last group. So, yeah, I think for me, Pollard's my favorite. And then Tracy and Warren are just at the bottom of the top 30 running backs.
You like them better than who? Than Pacheco?
Pacheco, Johnson. Aaron Jones is right in the mix with those guys.
Oh, man, that's so interesting.
Like Tony Pollard versus Isaiah Pacheco, I think the argument for Pacheco is much better offense.
No, that's not my argument. My argument is that there were 9 games that Pollard and Spears both played together last year when they were both healthy, didn't leave early. And Pollard was on pace for only 236 carries and 43 catches, which is nice. In the games where Pollard played without Spears or with Spears leaving early, he was on pace for 328 carries. I don't think people realize there was actually a pretty big split last year, and they keep talking about wanting to make it even more even.
236 carries, though. I mean, and I know Pacheco hasn't played 17 games as a starter, which it's year 4, so maybe that says something. But 236 carries is 14 carries a game. That's about what Pacheco averaged in his best season.
But they keep saying that they want to make it more of a split. And last year, Spears, I don't know if I buy this, but Spears was the goal line back last year.
Right. I don't think Pacheco is necessarily the goal line back.
Yeah. All right. Okay. I mean, you make a good point. So, all righty.
You have a big separation between those two, Adam?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I mean, again, Pacheco was RB 14 per game 2 years ago, and he was a second round pick. So I am worried about Spears really eating into that backfield, and I am worried about their offense not being that good. That is part of it. It's just the split is more of a concern for me. All right. How about when you look at Brian Robinson Jr.? Well, okay, just Pollard, Brian Robinson, Tyrone Tracy, Jalen Warren. How do you feel about that group, Heath? As they should be your RB3, they should be your flex. What is it?
I mean, they ideally would be your flex. I think Pollard's the closest to an RB2, and maybe these guys are your RB2 if you really went 0 RB, or maybe they're RB1 based on ADP. But I get more excited about, like, excluding Pollard because he's clearly the top for me, about Tracy and Warren in full PPR because of what they could do as pass catchers. Then I can't get excited about Brian Robinson Jr. at all. They're not sure he's that overvalued in terms of where he's being drafted. I don't think he's going to ever have a great season.
What about at half PPR? Do you go Brian Robinson or Jalen Warren?
I'd probably still go Warren.
Jamie?
There's the upside that Warren is better than Caleb Johnson this year. And I know that sounds crazy to say because we're all expecting Caleb Johnson to be this high-profile rookie and steps in and runs away with the job. And he could. And I wouldn't shock me if he does. But so far, at least early in camp, and I'm guessing it's not dramatically different, like he's been struggling in pass protection. And you have a 40-year-old quarterback and a coordinator who once upon a time was the head coach of a team that drafted the greatest prospect at running back that we've seen before Ashton Jeanty. Previous guy was Saquon Barkley, and he didn't use him as the full featured guy. He used Tyler Algier. So it wouldn't shock me if they continue to use Jalen Warren as a 10-something carry per game guy and a 4 to 5 catch per game guy, or at least 4 to 5 targets per game. There's a chance like he may have as much work, if not more, than Caleb Johnson this season. Like, he's one of my favorite players to take in this range.
And I have Warren ahead of Caleb Johnson in full PPR. So everything Jamie said. That
surprises me because he's never finished higher than 29th per game, I think, in full PPR. Or maybe I'm a little off on that.
But I think that speaks to what we see from coaches like a Mike Tomlin, and what I'm afraid of for Amari Hampton with Jim Harbaugh is that Najee Harris doesn't do things that make coaches crazy.
Okay, but Jalen Warren's been the third down back, and Najee Harris has. Do you remember how many times throughout the last 3 years there's been a report, Jalen Warren's going to get more work this week? And they never gave it to him. They had all these opportunities to put in the spark plug, the guy that actually could make a big play, the guy that was a more efficient rusher than Najee Harris, and they never did it. It makes me think that they don't want to give him a big workload here.
Oh, I don't think this is not he's taking the job and is going to be Derrick Henry in terms of workload. This is
Derrick Henry.
You know what I mean? Like, he's not going to be
Tony Pollard.
He's not going to be Tony Pollard. I don't think we're getting, barring a Caleb Johnson injury, 236 carries for Jalen Warren. I think we're looking at maybe there's 260 vacated carries. Mm-hmm. Maybe there's a chance that Jalen Warren gets to 180 plus. Maybe he's pushing for 200 if things go very well for him. I think the passing numbers should easily favor Jalen Warren here.
Yeah.
And then you get to the second layer of this. We're expecting Mike Tomlin to be Mike Tomlin and maybe Arthur Smith to be Arthur Smith. You got a quarterback here who knows how to play mind games and F with everybody in that locker room and the coaching staff, and he may get control of everything, and it's what he wants.
Maybe. Okay. So
And I just think in this range of guys, especially in PPR, like you're looking for upside. Floor matters clearly. And Brian Robinson's floor is probably very safe because his competition is a 30-plus-year-old Austin Eckler, a late round, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, who's getting a lot of hype, but we don't know how that'll work out. I don't want to take Brian Robinson, but he's still the lead running back on what should be a very good offense.
Sure. Okay, Heath, just real quick, you said you moved Tyrone Tracy up. Where he's RB 30 in ADP. Where'd you move him to?
RB 29. So great value. No, 27 actually. I think that's round 7 for me. So it sounds like he is as Jordan Renan saying that there's no competition for RB1, that Tyrone Tracy is the RB1 to start the year. So I still think Scadaboo could cut into that, but for now. But again, it's the same thing with Warren. Like, we're not inside the top 25 running backs anymore.
No.
There are going to be guys we talk about later that have more upside if somebody gets hurt. These are flex plays.
All right, so I know we talked strategy yesterday, but since we're in this range, like I'll just bring up what I did with the flex draft, which is a half PPR league. I took 2 receivers with my first 2 picks of CeeDee Lamb and AJ Brown, Kyron Williams in round 3, 2 more receivers in rounds 4 and 5. And then we got to round 6 and it was okay. The position was drying up. This was my next 4 picks. Tony Pollard in round 6, Jaylen Warren in round 7, Joe Mixon in round 8, and Tyrone Tracy in round 9.
Yeah. Now that you should have taken Mixon in round 6, but that's fine. LOL. No, that's great. Good job.
But again, that's how you can sort of, manage this. Now it may be 4 different running backs. Obviously, we're seeing Tracy's value in just a matter of, 4 or 5 days increase. Mixon probably a steal based on where he went, especially if you're drafting with Adam, would have taken him round 3. So I got a little lucky with that group there, but I only took one other running back, and it was just Jarquez Hunter to handcuff Kyron Williams.
Tyrone Tracy, by the way, in the last 13 games of the season was the number 16 running back per game in half PPR, number 20 running back per game in full PPR, and only on pace for 235 carries. Their offense was so bad, and 44 catches in there. Okay, moving on. Let's just take a look at the rest of the groups of the rest of the running backs here, and you guys tell me, who do you find yourself drafting a lot? So Scadaboo and Judkins. When would you take Judkins, guys?
11.
Double-digit rounds at this point.
All right, now we're up to pick 100. Do you find yourself drafting these guys? Travis Etienne.
And if this is too soon, but if he falls a little bit more, like I think there's going to be a narrative that may be a little bit overblown against Etienne because of the Tank Bigsby hype and what we're going to start to hear, I think, over the course of the next week about Tootin. I don't think Etienne's going to get benched, and so he's going to have some semblance of a role. So if you can sort of take him as a high-end reserve, it's fine. But I think there's some other guys I'd rather have in this range, including his own teammate, Tank Bigsby.
I like him at pick 100.
Okay, next up is Javonte Williams, 104th overall. How do you feel about Javonte? How do you feel about the Cowboys running backs? What's the best value right now?
Jaden Blue's the best value.
Yeah. I think it's going to be a gross mess.
I actually heard today that Miles Sanders is really legitimately read that he's still in the mix.
Great problem. I mean, that just tells you everything you need to know.
Okay, after Javonte,
I do think the more hype you hear for Williams and Sanders, the more I really want to take just Jaden Blue the later he falls.
Ramondre Stevenson and Najee Harris.
Stevenson's so interesting to me because I don't think he's going away. Like, I don't think Travion Henderson's coming in to be a 250-plus carry guy. And I know Stevenson's fumble history is awful, and he's already fumbled once in camp. And I do like the fact that he's lost weight. I think he's obviously threatened by the presence of Henderson. It's still Mike Vrabel. And even Josh McDaniels' history, at least with that team, there's always been the pass catcher and the physical guy. And so I think there's going to be a stretch of the season, probably early in the year, and the schedule is so great that Stevenson will still have some very good games. I'm total agreement, I think, with where Heath is on this, and based on our rankings, like Henderson should be drafted 4 or 5 rounds ahead of Stevenson. But like you saw last night, Adam, I took Stevenson. It was, I don't remember what round it was, but it was fairly late. Like he's not a bad reserve. I think it's like around 10. Like, he's not a bad guy just to stick on your bench and see what happens.
They have a very easy schedule, so that could favor Ramondre, give him a few more touchdown opportunities. Najee Harris, I guess you guys aren't super interested in right now, but what do you like? Is round 10 okay for Harris?
Yeah, fall back.
Yeah.
Okay, next up, we go deeper. We love J.K. Dobbins at this point, right? In round 10.
I like the guy behind him more, but yeah.
You like Jordan Mason more than Dobbins?
Yes.
Okay. So we like them better than Javonte and Ramondre and Najee?
I think this is where, at least for me in my rankings, like this is where it starts to come down to roster build. So the floor is probably safer for Javonte. I guess I like them better than Najee, but the floor is probably safer for Javonte, just given the fact that he could be the starter for the Cowboys. But I think the upside favors, I mean, if Dobbins is the lead running back for the Broncos, you saw last year what he can be. If Mason is going to get as much work as potentially advertised behind a 30-year-old running back in Minnesota and Aaron Jones, like they're huge upside as well. So if you're just looking for, okay, I need somebody to maybe get me through a few weeks, I'm probably taking Javonte. I hate drafting that way, so I would probably lean toward Dobbins or Mason.
Someone saying I expect McCaffrey to get hurt this year. I would get Jordan Mason. Mason is now on the Vikings, so Aaron Jones could get hurt. But yes, you should be thinking about Christian McCaffrey's handcuff, which is who? Is it still Garendo? You think he's got the injury?
I think so.
Okay.
For now.
All right. Garendo was very good when pressed into action last year. After Dobbins and Mason, we have Zach Charbonnet. We have Rashad White. Who do you prefer there?
Sharps.
So again, Charbonnet, I think, is the much more high upside pick. 11 games last year, which was a career low for Ken Walker. And Charbonnet was awesome almost every time he got the opportunity to be that guy. So if it's who do you need to maybe get you through a few weeks, it's probably Rashad White, but I would take the chance on Charbonnet first.
We've got Tyjae Spears.
Great value.
Yep. And we've got Austin Eckler. And then we've got Tank Bigsby at RB44.
Best value.
I don't think that you can. Don't go into your draft thinking you're going to get Tank Bigsby in the 12th round. It's probably a little ambitious.
Right.
Because again, ADP, it stretches over time. There haven't been that many drafts yet. Bigsby is clearly a riser. Jaden Blue maybe as well. I think Jaden Blue is realistic in round 12, though. You got Garendo. You got Nick Chubb. If you were going to take a backup running back on the Texans, who would you take?
Chubb for now.
I wouldn't.
Okay. Bajal Tootin, Trey Benson, Tyler Algier. Because Bijan Robinson hasn't gotten hurt, Algier is a very late handcuff, but certainly could be awesome.
League winner,
yeah. And then you got Jerome Ford. So if you're not going to take Quinshon Judkins, which Cleveland running back are you going to take?
I think you want to take either one. Sampson's a wild card just because I don't think he'll be the lead runner there. But you said this many a time, like it feels like they want to replace Ford almost every time they give him the job. And so he's probably going to be the lead rusher, but I'm sure they're going to work in Sampson. Like I said this when the Judkins situation was unfolding, like I don't think Judkins and Sampson or Ford and Sampson changes very much. That Sampson's role was kind of, locked in to some degree. He will get more carries with Jerome Ford as the starter versus Judkins most likely. But I don't think that's going to change very much. I think Sampson's going to be more of a change of pace guy, passing downs guy, 2-minute type of guy, like until he can really prove he can be a lead rusher. Jerome Ford taking a pay cut to come back clearly shows you what they think of him.
I'll take Sampson over Ford, but both are good values discussed.
Something to think about in this range. Austin in our chat says Bigsby could just take. Oh no, sorry, that's not the one. It was in response to this. Forrest says Bigsby. Nope, it wasn't this either. Someone said, "What is Bigsby's upside?" And it's a good point.
I think those two comments just said it for you.
Well, yeah, right. He might. You look at all these running backs here. Bigsby might score more fantasy points than all of them. But obviously, if Ken Walker gets hurt, Zach Charbonnet is going to be a lot better than Tank Bigsby. If James Cook gets hurt, Ray Davis is going to be a lot better than Tank Bigsby. We'd think. So it's up to you. If you want to take Bigsby, great. It's a good pick. But also put some guys who have almost no value if the running back, if there's not an injury, but have huge value.
So again, it comes down to, I think, how you like to draft. And for me, somebody who waits on quarterback and tight end, like I'm usually looking for those two positions in the round 7 through 10 range. And then because of how I have stockpiled running backs and wide receivers, like these are easy swing for the fence type of picks. So you want to take Ray Davis and Braylon Allen and, Dylan Sampson and these type of guys, Jaden Blue, Bashal Tutin. Like they're just, one of them is probably going to be awesome because of an injury. And it might not be the whole season. It might be just a stretch of games.
So who are your favorite handcuffs? Let's finish with that. Your favorite ones.
In what range?
In this range.
Well, I mean, because, Charbonnet and
Sure.
Mason go sooner than that.
Yeah, in the RB 50-ish range. So Ray Davis, Tyler Algier, Trey Benson, so on.
Davis and Braylon Allen are two of my favorites.
Davis and Benson for me.
Okay. All right. I don't know if there's anybody else we need to talk about here. Anyone important?
Oh, Garendo, I think it's ball test range too.
Roshan Johnson. What do you think about the Bears' number 2 running back situation?
I would guess it's Roshan at this point, just based on his opportunity, what he's listed on the depth chart at least. I would guess it's going to be a fluid situation.
Yeah.
Which is why you're seeing DJ Moore in the backfield a lot. They're probably not happy with everybody except for DeAndre Swift. So I always butcher his name.
Monangai
is worth a late round flyer, but probably somebody will end up cutting. I think, a couple guys that weren't mentioned at the end of this. We got a few Woody Marks comments in the chat. Yes, because of the Joe Mixon situation. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt is absolutely worth a late round flyer at this point. Depending on where you're drafting. And then you want to keep an eye on the backup situation in Philadelphia. I think it's being a split role right now between Will Shipley and AJ Dillon. Probably would be a shared situation if Barkley had to miss any time, but similar to Tyler Algier, but obviously a lot less clarity, is if Barkley does miss any games, that offensive line we know is great. The system is great. I would bank on Shipley at this point, but it wouldn't shock me if Dillon gets a little bit more run than we expect.
If you have Jonathan Taylor, it seems like DJ Giddens could be a good handcuff there as well, but
yep.
Plenty of handcuff options. There are 32 teams, so that gives us a lot of handcuff options. And that's it for the running backs. We'll start wide receiver tomorrow. Woohoo! The last of our position previews tomorrow and Friday. Also, Thursday night at 10:30 p.m. Eastern, we are recording the mailbag. So that's going to be me, Dan, and Jamie at 10:30. It's going to be insane.
And Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, Dan's going out before that, right?
I think so. I think he has plans.
So yeah. Dan's coming back in a great mood.
Yeah, and there's going to be a lot of tennis smack talk.
What would somebody have to donate for you to bring smelling salts and take them between each set?
$1,000.
I really like my idea. I know you don't like it because you're such a tennis guy, that this should be, as more people donate, like you have to add layers of clothing.
No. No.
Like, why would you not make it fun?
Right.
I want to play because I want to play and I want to win.
But I just want to clarify. $1,000 donation, and you will use smelling salts.
No, I can't do it. I don't think it's safe.
So, NFL athletes do it. George Kittle said he does it on every drive.
Not good for Adam's body.
I wouldn't even know how to do. I wouldn't even know how to smell them. I'd screw it up.
We can get you a tutorial.
I just don't understand. Like, you're gonna lose.
No, I don't know that. I think I'm gonna lose.
You're gonna lose. Like, why would you not want to raise more money for St. Jude?
I mean,
I'm in 24 fantasy leagues right now, running them and setting up drafts. They get this for the FFP.
If somebody legitimately was going to give, let's say, like a $5,000 donation for you to wear like a weird hat, you wouldn't do it?
Of course.
$5,000 to do smelling salts?
Fine.
For each set?
Yeah.
Okay, we're locked in.
What if it's like, we see a lot of these, challenges for fantasy punishments, or punishments for losing your fantasy league, or like, things to determine your draft thing. So like, what if it was like you had to drink a liter of soda? I know you wouldn't do it, but like if you had to drink, you have to chug orange juice for 5 minutes.
Oh God. I mean, you basically just asking me to barf on camera.
Yeah,
but I would do something like that. All right. We'll talk to you tomorrow with wide receivers on Fantasy Football Today.